championship matches, a brutal strap match, and so much more to discuss on this post-show reaction to Bash in Berlin. What is going on, everybody? My name is Jose Ramos Jr., and I gotta say, Berlin certainly delivered in terms of the crowd reception, the participation, and just the overall hype that was anticipated for an event like this. It had been since 1997 since the WWE had presented a major event in Berlin, Germany, and from start to finish, the crowd, if anything, really amped itself up with each match that progressed. But we're going to start off with the WWE Championship, Cody Rhodes defending his title against Kevin Owens. This, for me, right off the bat, I think was my favorite matchup. Not to take away from any of the other matches that take place, but you talk about the in-ring athleticism, the story that was being told, and also the potential for furthering the story moving forward. Kevin Owens, of course, alluding to a knee injury that Cody Rhodes sustained during the tour in Germany. Cody Rhodes didn't want to sell it, though. He kept saying, I don't know what you're talking about. My knee's fine. I'm 100%. But we started to see a little bit of hints of the old prize fighter Kevin Owens in this matchup. Many times we would see that Cody Rhodes kind of wasn't moving the way we were used to seeing Cody moving. In fact, there was a moment where he was going to hit, a super Cody cutter and kind of got an injury on his left knee. He kind of felt a certain way and wasn't able to capitalize on it. Kevin Owens realizing this and again, hinting at that knee and wanting to attack it, but ultimately chose not to. He didn't want to have a tainted victory. He wanted to beat Cody at his best and also do it without taking advantage or taking a cheap shot rather at an injury that Cody might or might not have had. I think in terms of the opener of the match, of the card, I should say, this was the right way to go. We knew that Gunther versus Randy was going to be the main event. Obviously, CM Punk and Drew McIntyre was going to find that sweet spot in the middle. But seeing Cody Rhodes and his progression throughout the course of his championship reign, I know there's a lot of portion of the audience that likes to criticize, Cody's reign and whether it's to be a troll or not. But you cannot deny that the level of quality in his title defenses, the quality in his title of defenses, whether it's against AJ, Logan Paul, Kevin Owens, and of course there's that Solo Sikoa matchup, which I think was probably the lesser of the list of defenses. He is always delivering. There's always that level of investment in a Cody Rhodes segment, in a Cody Rhodes matchup, and now seeing that he has soundly defeated Kevin Owens, you begin to look forward to what's next. We knew that Solo Sikoa had already alluded to the fact that he will be targeting whoever were to win this matchup, and of course Cody Rhodes being the individual to win. It looks like we're on a collision course here for another Solo versus Cody matchup. I'm going to be frank with you, that's not something I'm looking forward to. I'm not asking for that. We just saw that at SummerSlam. Maybe they're going to try to hint at it and have him, kind of set his eyes on Cody, ultimately to be derailed or distracted by a returning Roman Reigns. But I don't think that's the right call. I don't think we go Cody versus Solo. Again, we just saw it, and it's a common agreement among the fans that that wasn't their best match in terms of the reign of Cody Rhodes. I think we still have more meat on the bone here when it comes to Kevin Owens. You can simply tell the story of Cody Rhodes, rewatching the matchup. That's another thing that I really appreciate about this current day and age in WWE is that they're showing these wrestlers to be more intelligent. They're keeping up with the product and not seemingly moving past whatever takes place. Cody can go back and watch the internal conflict that Kevin Owens had to deal with throughout the course of that matchup, recognize that, and buy enough time for him to heal up and say, let's run it back. Or, and what I think would probably be the more sensible way of doing it, is have Kevin Owens begin that slow turn. Kevin Owens was the star of this matchup. He held up a lot more weight in the storytelling aspect of the Cody versus Kevin matchup. And one thing I did want to point out is although the Berlin crowd, was pretty much down the middle when it came to their support of both wrestlers, I would say it was more 60-40 in favor of Kevin Owens. You have to give Kevin Owens his flowers. You have to give him his due because it has been well over 6 years since he's held a world championship. He was a Universal Champion back in 2017 before losing that title controversially to Bill Goldberg in the lead up to WrestleMania 33. And now that we're seeing him reintegrated into these title matchups, they made the distinction that it was his first title opportunity since the Royal Rumble 2023. Kevin Owens has been doing a phenomenal job. Like I said, both in ring and character wise. But you see at the end of that match, there's this moment where he's looking at Cody, obviously disappointed. Who wouldn't be disappointed after a loss like that? He knew he had it in his grasps and he didn't take advantage. He could have powerbombed Cody onto the ring apron like he's done countless of times to many of his opponents, many of his friends even, but he didn't. And that showed restraint. That showed something different with Kevin Owens. He knows in his heart that it wasn't the right thing. But over time, I think it's going to get to Kevin. He's going to recognize that I can't be this way. If I want to be champion, if I want to be the best, I have to be ruthless the way I was back in NXT, back in the early days of his WWE career. And one thing that was very telling was at the end, he has this moment where he shares an embrace with Cody Rhodes. They give each other, a hug and recognizing one another. He raises Cody's hand. Cody then wants to raise Kevin, but he immediately shuts that down and goes to raise Cody's hand again. And the moment when they hug, and Kevin locks eyes with the cameraman and he just pushes that camera out the way. Now, maybe on the surface, it's just they're sharing a moment. He's all up in their face, all up in their grill, doesn't want that. I get that. But I feel like this is the beginning of a turn for Kevin Owens. I've been alluding to it for the last couple weeks. If you kept up to date with the prediction videos or the SmackDown post-show reactions, I don't think it's going to be something that's just so sudden. We're going to start to see these little subtle hints, these little distinctions and characteristics in Kevin Owens that will lead him to the dark side once again. But nonetheless, Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens, I think, was a standout matchup. I really enjoyed it from start to finish. And from there on, we kept it moving with the blue brand. We saw the tag team titles being defended. It was the unholy union of Alba Fire and Isla Dawn defending their tag titles against the super team of Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair. I will say, of the 5 matches on the card, I feel like this one had the least amount of heat to it. And that's not to put down any of the competitors or the match quality. It was a fun match. I think on the basis of the card and how it was structured and how it was built upon, this one to me was among one of the more predictable finishes. I think we gave the Unholy Union those tag title runs, as a result of Clash at the Castle, and deservedly so. These two are one of the best tag team, women's tag team in the division. And we give them the tag title run. But they benefit more, the titles that is. They benefit more when they are around the waists of stars such as a Jade and Bianca Belair. I think that it does well for them. The only issue, the only concern that I have moving forward is, what are we going to do now? Because now we're back at square one. It's like as if they never lost the titles. Who will be their challengers? I could see in a world that they'll have like Nia Jax and Tiffany Stratton at one point interjected into that storyline, because you'd have so many moving parts, whether it's the whole Money in the Bank of Tiffany Stratton versus Nia Jax. You have those two. You have maybe Bianca or Jade challenging for the women's title. Don't be surprised if somewhere along the lines that is something we look forward to. Of course, you have other tag teams to consider as well, like the team of Sonya Deville's group of Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler, who did have a title match at Clash at the Castle, but they're still searching for that one-on-one opportunity against the tag team champions. And even then, Damage Control, Kairi Sane and Io Sky, they've been feuding with them as well. So there's a lot of directions to move forward with this tag titles. Again, I feel like it was just an opportunity to get another championship match on the card and get the women involved as well in Berlin's, big event of Bash in Berlin. Ultimately, like I said, Jade and Bianca would win. They successfully challenged and successfully won back the tag titles. But the next matchup after was one of, the top 3 matches of the card that we were looking forward to. It's a matchup that had been highly anticipated since November. Of course, it would be part two of the supposed trilogy between CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. I think it's a very common assumption that this will be a trilogy. It's going to be a best of three. And CM Punk wanting to get his revenge on Drew McIntyre for the loss that he suffered at SummerSlam, and they would do it in a strap match. Now, not just in any conventional strap match, it would be much more of the Texas Bull Rope variation, where in order to win the matchup, you have to go around the ring and touch each corner of said ring. I'm gonna be 100% with you. Heading into the matchup, I wasn't a fan. I don't like that variation of the matchup. As a kid, sure, it was a little bit nice because you had all this, gaga, all the glitz and glamour, and you add to the matchup. But at the center of the story, it should be just Punk versus Drew wanting to punish each other to the point where the other just can't do it anymore and they either have to quit, submit, or get pinned. Very much in the vein of like the dog collar matchup that MJF and Punk had back in AEW Revolution. But that wasn't the case. They went with this route, and if anybody was going to make it work, it was going to be CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. And I can confidently say that the match exceeded my expectations. I knew with those two, running the match, it was bound to be entertaining. And because of the story at hand, we were already invested. Punk gets the win in an entertaining matchup, I will say, and he finally regains, ownership over the bracelet that Drew McIntyre has had for months now. But I don't think the story ends there. Bad Blood, October 5th, just around the corner, Atlanta, Georgia. I think that's where we're going to pay it off. I think that's where the ultimate ending to this matchup takes place. And if you ask me, it makes perfect sense to put these two inside Hell in a Cell. It's just right there. The Bad Blood event that hosted the very first Hell in a Cell matchup all the way back in October 5th, 1997. This is a match that was made to end feuds, to hold in two opponents, two rivals who could not be controlled. That is the purpose of the Cell. And this is the matchup I think that should be, the stipulation of the third match, of the rubber match, of the ultimate end to Punk versus McIntyre. But that's just moving too far in advance. We're still talking about Bash in Berlin, and you want to talk about personal feuds. The mixed tag match. Dominic Mysterio and his partner Liv Morgan facing off against the Terror Twins of Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley. A good buffer match, I thought, because we had a high intense feud between Punk and McIntyre. We knew the main event was going to be Gunther versus Randy Orton, and you had this nice little mixed tag match. Again, entertaining because of the story, entertaining because of the players involved. They did their job, and they executed it to perfection. Heading into this matchup, I predicted that the Judgment Day would somehow get involved because we all know that's part of the playbook. That's in the textbook of Judgment Day plays. And sure enough, they would get involved. And I would think that the Judgment Day would emerge victorious. I think the center of this story is Finn versus Damian Priest. I think that's the match we're going to be getting at Bad Blood. Did it end the way I thought? No, it didn't. But in my prediction, I might have had a little oversight when it came to the players involved. This saga of the Judgment Day implosion really takes a note from Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley. Liv Morgan already got a pin over Rhea Ripley at SummerSlam. So naturally, it would make sense to have Rhea Ripley return the favor, getting a pin over Liv Morgan, so that they can have their rubber match as well. And I'm suspecting it'll be for the Women's World title. And again, overall, an entertaining matchup. I thought it was the right call. Dominic Mysterio, one of the best heels in the company right now. I find him to be so entertaining. Anytime he's on TV, he's in a match, he's on the microphone, you have to keep up to what he's doing. I'm looking so forward to what they're able to do. Moving past the story, I know we're still well into the Judgment Day implosion story, but once we kind of settle into his role and kind of deviate away from the Terror Twins, I would love to see what the WWE has in store for him, not only as a featured member of the Judgment Day, because I feel like it's Finn and then Dominic, but potentially what we're going to do with him as a single star, because eventually he's going to break away, and who knows? Typically, when you see a guy break in as a heel and get over with the crowd, that leads to great success as a babyface. And I know in the moment right now, Dominic is one of the best heels, and it's hard to imagine him as a babyface. But stranger things have happened. Look at Roman Reigns, who back in 2015 was supposed to be the big baby face of the company, but was being booed out of the country essentially. And now we look at him as a tribal chief and one of the biggest stars of all time. Yeah, I don't think that can be disputed really. Anyway, we go to the main event. Randy Orton challenges for Gunther. We knew this was going to be a hard-hitting contest, but what I think we didn't anticipate as much was the importance, was the participation of the audience. Berlin brought it when it came to this matchup. I mean, the energy was at an all-time high. You could see, there was a little measuring of the decibels of how loud the audience was during this matchup. Randy Orton brought the fight to Gunther like no one has brought before. You could argue someone like an Ilya Dragunov back in NXT had really contested against Gunther, Sami Zayn at WrestleMania. But in terms of a physical fight, Randy Orton, directly attacks the shoulder of Gunther, hindering him on his ability to deliver those just devastating chops. We saw many times throughout the match he was going for a powerbomb, couldn't really get him to lift Randy because of that bum shoulder, and we would see a bruise forming as well on his shoulder. Just great storytelling there. Randy Orton is one of the greatest of all time. It is no debate there. A 14-time champion who was aiming to win his 15th title, but ultimately Gunther would not allow it. Gunther pulls through and defeats Randy Orton with the sleeper hold, which I thought was a great way to protect Randy, a great way to elevate Gunther. Both are just going to be just fine. Randy Orton probably will be heading back to SmackDown, where he was designated before this rivalry took place. But now, where do we leave with Gunther? Who will be Gunther's next challenger? Damian just lost the title. Punk and Drew are still embroiled in this feud. Jey Uso is more likely going to become the number one contender for the Intercontinental Champion. At this rate, it's really open to anyone, and I'm all for it. I'm looking forward to it. One name that immediately comes to mind, maybe Sheamus, maybe Ilya Dragunov. I think those would be two great competitors to pair up with Gunther, but that's going to be a discussion for another day. Bash in Berlin, what an event. Another successful PLE for the WWE, especially one that was overseas. I love when they do these overseas events because it gives an opportunity to an audience who doesn't necessarily get a WWE show as often as other crowds. And you really saw that here with Berlin. They capitalized on each moment that they had. You saw many instances where they created these chants, where they were doing the wave, and just the participation level off the charts. People were saying, initial thoughts, it's on par with Lyon, France at Backlash earlier this year. Just overall a great show. If you enjoy content such as this, make sure to keep a lookout for the NXT No Mercy initial thoughts and review video that I should be having out immediately following that show, as well as take a look at my reaction to AEW's event All In from last week. Of course, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you guys for joining me in this video. Don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with all the content that's available. I'll see you guys in the next one.